A bronze face more than a meter wide was pulled from a pit in southwest China, with its eyes still staring 16 centimeters out of their sockets. It had been burned. Its surface was broken, and it had been buried beneath layers of elephant tusks, jade, gold, and shattered sacred objects nearly 3,000 years ago. The face was not designed to be worn. It was too large, too heavy, too strange. It belonged to a civilization whose rulers left no readable history, whose gods have no confirmed names, and whose greatest treasures appear to have been deliberately destroyed before they were placed underground. This is Sanxingdui, and the mystery is not simply who made the bronze masks. It is why a powerful Bronze Age society gathered its most valuable sacred objects, set many of them on fire, broke them apart, and buried them in pits as its political center began to fade. Sanxingdui lies near Guanghan in Sichuan province, on the fertile Chengdu plain. Later Chinese texts remembered an ancient state called Shu and described legendary rulers, but those accounts were written centuries after Sanxingdui had changed. Then objects began coming out of the ground. In 1929, a farmer digging an irrigation ditch uncovered a group of jade artifacts near the site. Archaeologists later identified ancient walls, foundations, workshops, pottery, and evidence of a major urban center. But nothing prepared them for what appeared in 1986. Two rectangular pits were uncovered, only a short distance apart. Inside were more than 900 objects made from bronze, gold, jade, stone, shell, and ivory. They did not resemble an ordinary burial. There were no complete royal bodies surrounded by personal possessions. Instead, the pits contained pieces of a sacred world: bronze heads, enormous masks, a standing human figure more than 2.5 meters tall when placed on its pedestal, a bronze tree rising nearly 4 meters after reconstruction, gold masks thin enough to cover bronze faces, birds, dragons, snakes, ritual vessels, jade blades, and piles of elephant tusks. If discoveries that reveal civilizations almost erased from history are why you are here, subscribe and turn on notifications. Because the first clue at Sanxingdui is not what these people created. It is what they did to their creations before burying them. Many of the objects had been deliberately damaged. Bronze pieces were bent, cut, or broken. Jades showed the effects of heat. Ivory was burned. Fragments that once belonged together were separated. Some objects appear to have been placed in layers, with large quantities of elephant tusks laid over ritual material before the pits were filled. This was not the slow collapse of an abandoned storeroom. People selected these objects. They treated them. They arranged them. Then they covered them. The traditional name, sacrificial pits, reflects the idea that the deposits resulted from large religious ceremonies, but the exact ritual remains unknown. No inscription explains the sequence or names the figures. We do not know whether the destruction represented an offering, a political crisis, a temple closure, or the defeat of one ruling group by another. The masks offer the first major clue. The largest known example is about 1.38 meters wide. Its eyebrows sweep upward, its ears stretch outward, its pupils project dramatically from the eyes. Later traditions about ancient Shu describe a legendary ruler named Kancong as having protruding eyes. This has encouraged the idea that the mask represents him. It is possible. But the written tradition is much later, and the identification cannot be proven. The face may represent a ruler, an ancestor, a god, or a supernatural being whose name disappeared with the society that worshipped it. The other heads deepen the mystery. Some were once covered with gold foil. Traces of black and red pigment survive on certain faces. Many are hollow, suggesting that they may have been attached to wooden bodies, posts, or larger ritual structures. They were not portraits in the ordinary sense. They may have been objects through which invisible beings were given a face. The huge masks were also too large for a human to wear. Openings near their sides suggest that some may have been fixed to wooden supports or displayed as part of monumental installations. Imagine entering a ceremonial building at Sanxingdui. Bronze faces stare from pillars. Gold catches the firelight. Painted eyes look forward from a surface that does not decay. Above them rise birds, branches, dragons, and sacred symbols in bronze. At the center stands a figure taller than any living person in the room. The surviving standing figure has enormous hands held in front of its body, as though gripping an object that is now missing. Its long robe carries complex patterns. Its elevated position suggests authority, but archaeologists still debate whether it depicts a king, priest, god, or ritual performer. Whatever it held may have explained the entire scene. That object is gone. The bronze tree is equally difficult to interpret. After reconstruction, it rises almost 4 meters. Branches curve outward. Birds perch among flowers and fruit. A dragon moves down the trunk. Ancient Chinese traditions describe sacred trees connecting different levels of the cosmos, but no surviving text identifies this specific object. The tree may have represented a pathway between earth, sky, ancestors, and divine powers. Or it may have been part of a ritual story unique to ancient Shu. Not a decoration, not a simple copy of nature. A model of how the universe was believed to work. And then someone broke it into pieces. Here is where the pits become more disturbing. Bronze of this size was not cheap or easy to produce. The makers needed copper, tin, lead, fuel, clay molds, skilled labor, and control over a complex casting process. Large objects were created from multiple sections and joined together. The technology drew on wider Bronze Age traditions, but the artists used it to produce forms found nowhere else on the same scale. Sanxingdui was not isolated. Some bronze vessel shapes connect it with cultures farther north and east. Jade objects reflect traditions shared across wide parts of ancient China. Shells, ivory, gold, and raw materials point to long-distance exchange. Yet the civilization was not a copy of the Shang world centered around the Yellow River. It developed its own visual language. Elsewhere, elite bronze production focused heavily on ritual vessels. At Sanxingdui, bronze became faces, bodies, trees, birds, eyes, and beings that seemed to stand between human and divine. The discovery changed the old picture of early Chinese civilization as the product of one central region spreading outward. The Chengdu Plain had its own urban society, workshops, religious system, and political power. Different centers were developing, interacting, and transforming ideas at the same time. But the greatest surprise came decades after the first pits were emptied. Archaeologists returned to the ritual area and found 6 more pits. From 2020 onward, careful excavations of pits 3 through 8 revealed golden masks, bronze heads, jade, ivory, silk traces, complex sculptures, and objects that could be joined with fragments discovered in 1986. Pieces buried in different pits belong to the same larger creations. That means the deposits were not unrelated accidents. They formed part of a connected event or sequence of events. The new pits also revealed combinations no one had expected. A human figure joined to a bird, a human head on a snake-like body, figures supporting ritual vessels, a large bronze creature with exaggerated features. Some objects were assembled from traditions that scholars once treated separately. A vessel form associated with the wider Chinese Bronze Age could be held aloft by a figure designed in the unmistakable Sanxingdui style. The people of Shu were borrowing, adapting, and recombining ideas. They were not cut off from the world. They were translating it. And that makes the destruction harder to explain. These objects were not outdated rubbish. They represented generations of technical knowledge and sacred authority. Why destroy them? The strongest explanation is ritual decommissioning. Sacred objects are not always discarded like ordinary tools. Breaking, burning, and burying them can remove them from normal human use while completing an offering. Under this interpretation, the pits mark the closing of a ceremonial system. The objects were burned and broken, not because they had become worthless, but because they were too important to reuse. The elephant tusks placed above them may have formed a final offering or protective layer. The burial completed the ritual. But that explanation has a problem. The scale is enormous. Why would an entire sacred collection need to be closed at once? One possibility is political change. A new ruling group may have rejected the symbols of an older order. Temples may have been dismantled. Images connected with previous rulers or priests may have been destroyed and buried. Another possibility is crisis. Conflict, environmental disruption, or changes in river systems may have weakened the city. Some researchers have suggested earthquakes or flooding, but no single disaster has been proven to explain the pits and the decline of Sanxingdui. Enemy destruction is also possible, but the deposits look more controlled than random looting. Valuable gold, jade, and ivory were left behind. If attackers wanted wealth, burying it carefully makes little sense. Now, does this prove that Sanxingdui practiced a religion completely separate from the rest of ancient China? No. Its objects show both regional originality and connections with other cultural centers. Does it prove that the masks represent non-human visitors or a lost species? No. Their exaggerated eyes and ears belong to artistic and ritual choices. There is no archaeological evidence that they portray extraterrestrials. Does it prove that every object was destroyed in one ceremony? Not yet. The pits may represent more than one event. Their contents, layers, burning patterns, and relationships are still being studied. But none of those cautions make the site ordinary. Sanxingdui reveals a civilization powerful enough to produce monumental bronze images, connected enough to acquire distant materials, and confident enough to create a religious world unlike anything archaeologists expected. Then its center changed. Around the end of Sanxingdui's great ritual period, activity shifted away from the city, about 40 kilometers to the southwest. At Jinsha, in modern Chengdu, archaeologists later found another major center. Jinsha contained gold masks, jade objects, elephant tusks, bronze figures, and powerful sun and bird imagery. The similarities suggest continuity. The people did not simply vanish. Their sacred traditions moved, changed, or were rebuilt somewhere else. That may be the final clue. The pits were not necessarily the grave of a civilization. They may have been the burial of one version of it. A political center closed. Its sacred objects were removed from use. Its authority shifted, and the next center inherited selected parts of its world, while leaving others beneath the soil. This would explain why the treasures were not carried away intact. They belonged to the old order. To move forward, the people of Shu may have believed that some objects had to remain behind. Today, the masks stand inside the Sanxingdui Museum, beneath controlled light. Their wooden supports, clothing, feathers, and ritual settings have disappeared. We see only bronze, making the faces appear stranger than they may once have looked. But the greatest mystery is not their appearance. It is the missing ceremony around them. Who stood before the masks? What did the giant figure hold? What story did the bronze tree tell? Whose power ended when the objects were broken? Archaeologists can reconstruct fragments, analyze pigments, date burned material, identify alloys, and match pieces separated for 3,000 years. But no laboratory can restore the words spoken over the pits. The people of Sanxingdui left no readable explanation. They left the result: a sacred forest shattered, golden faces removed from sight, elephant tusks laid across broken gods, and beneath the earth, a final decision preserved without its reason. The kingdom was not erased. Its greatest treasures survived. But whatever happened before they were buried was meant to end one world and begin another. And the next investigation is waiting on screen now.